guys, my name is Kristen Grunder from Grunderfully Delicious. Thank you so much for joining me in my Dolce Vita class. You should have your box of cookies and icing. It came with a practice sheet just like this one, a scribe tool, and some extra piping bags in case you need to rebag your icing. I just want to give you a quick rundown of the class. We are actually going to practice on this practice sheet first so that you guys get a feel of the icing, and then I'm going to show you step by step how to outline your cookies, how to fill them in. So if you want them to look this adorable, which we all want, I highly recommend you watch all the steps that I do on the screen. I'm super excited for this class. I have not taught it yet, so you guys are my first students for this. So what you're going to do is you're going to get everything out of your bag. You should have left your icing out for at least 15 to 30 minutes or so. It's great if you have like a table fan that you can use in between steps to allow things to crust. If you don't, no worries, you'll just wait a little longer between steps, but go ahead and get your icing out of your bag and your cookies out, and we'll get started. So what you guys are going to do once your icing is all out and thawed, you're going to give all your bags a massage. If you notice, we have a lot of this bulky plastic. I'm actually going to cut that off. I like to keep my area nice and tidy, so this is one way you can do that. So don't cut too close to that black tape. We still want some space here, otherwise the icing will come out the top. So we're going to keep that a little space right there. Get that all ready. Massage all your bags really, really well before we get started. So we're going to go ahead and practice with our dark blue. This is probably the most important part of class, and that's how you cut your holes. So you want to be really careful to always cut your holes smaller than you think you need to start, and then you can always adjust it and make it larger if you need to. But my goal is to get my dark blue icing as thick as this black line here, and that's what we're going to work on. So whenever I cut my tiny hole, I want to make sure that seam is facing up and that it's centered, and then I flatten the tip. I'm going to cut tiny, 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 because again, I can cut more later. And you always want to have a paper towel so that you can, which I don't have one in front of me right now, but we're just going to squeeze a little bit out just to make sure that the icing is coming out nice and clean. Now, once you've cut your hole, you're going to hold the tip, pinch it with your thumb and your pointer finger. Excuse my very terrible nails, but even though that tape is there, it will not prevent the icing from coming out the top. So you want to pinch that closed and then twist the pod. Resting the pod in your hand, you're going to put pressure with these 3 fingers. I like to hold my wrist steady, and then I start by touching my tip on the paper, squeeze gently, and then lift my tip immediately. I am not dragging it on the paper, it is lifted. But because I'm lifted here, I want to unsqueeze a little early, and then I lay the rest down and touch. If your line's breaking, that means you're not squeezing hard enough, and if it's squiggly, either your hole is too small or you're squeezing too hard. And if you have any crusties on here, you just wipe it off. If you do cut your hole too big and the icing's flowing out too fast, you do have those extra piping bags. What you'll do is you'll just cut this off, squeeze it into the new bag, and tie that in a knot. I want to show you how high that I hold my tip, just so that you guys can see that we're not dragging it. So I start by, let's go up here, touching my tip, squeeze, lift. Squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break. Oop, that almost broke. And then release the pressure, lay that down, touch. All right, so go ahead and work just on those lines for right now, and then meet me back here to show you the rest of the practice sheet. So if you need to cut your hole bigger, if you are seeing black underneath this, you want to make sure that seam is facing back up and that you re-flatten the tip. Here we go. For the waves and the swirls, I start off just the same. I touch, squeeze, lift immediately, and this time I'm looking a little bit ahead of where I want that icing to fall. Squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break, but taking my time, release the pressure, lay this down, touch, give my tip a little swipe, touch, squeeze, lift. If you're squeezing too hard, you're not going to have control of this icing. And if you're squeezing too soft, what's going to happen is that line will break. For our circles, we do have circles today, but I'm going to be doing them a little different than what I'm showing you here. But I'm squeezing just slightly softer on the bag, Really taking my time, watching the line fall on the black line, and then slowly release the pressure and touch. That was a mighty good circle, if I do say so myself. For the heart, what I'm showing you here is every point or corner, you're going to put your tip down. So I have a starting point where I touch, squeeze, lift, really taking my time. And when I get to this point here, I'm going to touch again and then lift up again, watching that icing fall, release the pressure and touch. All right, so finish that practice sheet and then meet me back here and we'll get started on our cookies. All right, we're gonna go ahead and outline our first cookie. And to start with that, I'm going to look at this little tab here and I'm gonna go straight across. So I'm going, tip is touching, I lift and I go straight across and touch. Okay, and then I will go the other side, lift and touch. I will close this off. When I outline, I like to go as close to the edge of the cookie as I can go, making sure to keep my tip clean. And now I'm going to go around lifting, again going as close to the edge as I can go, all the way around with my red, touch, and then finish this here. Then I'm going to go around one more time, leaving about 1/4 of an inch around, and I like to just kind of watch the space on the outside just to try to evenly space this out as much as I can. You don't want to have this too wide because you want to fit those sardines in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do this bottom area as well, about 1/4 of an inch. Oh no, I just messed up, you guys. You know what? If you mess up, you have your little wooden scribe tool and you're just going to wipe that off. I have my fancy pink one because I'm here at the studio. But just so you know, the outline doesn't have to be completely perfect. You just really are focusing on closing that cookie and getting like the basic shape that you're looking for. So I'm just gonna pretend that never happened and go back to where I was at and continue outlining. So meet me back here once both of your cookies are outlined. So now we're going to flood the yellow section as well as the light blue section. I don't want to flood the red yet because I really want these areas to keep their shape. So with the yellow, I'm just going to cut an outline hole like we've been doing. We still need that outline hole because we need to outline our lemon, but I'm going to cut this just a touch more. And we'll start by flooding this area right here. So I'm holding the tape closed really tight, twisting the bag again, and instead of lifting like we did when we outlined, we're going to almost touch the tip of our bag to the cookie, just above it. And I like to go around the outside of the area that I'm flooding first. So I'm very close to the cookie. If I was lifted here, I would not be able to direct where that icing goes. So I'm just gonna go ahead. I like to do what I call the squeeze and jiggle. So I'm squeezing and I kind of jiggle my tip in there to kind of smooth it out. But right now we're just focused on filling in the cookie. If you notice, I didn't leave any holes. If you're having to come back with your scribe tool and move a bunch of icing around, it usually means you didn't add enough icing in there. So what I'm going to do now that it's all filled in, I'm going to take my scribe, gently stab the cookie and give it a shake, or you can kind of jiggle the surface. Another way to smooth this out is taking the tip of your bag and kind of just on the surface, kind of gently squeeze and jiggle until that smooths out. I don't like to pick up the cookie just because I will guarantee get my finger in there and mess up the outline that I've made. So once that is flooded, we're gonna flood the light blue part. So go ahead and massage your light blue while you're watching me do this. And you also need to massage the white. If you look at the photo, there are white lines coming down vertically. And we're doing something called the wet on wet technique to create that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flood the light blue area first, and while that's wet, I'm going to add white stripes. So I want to make sure that my white is ready. So I'm going to cut my blue small and my white. I highly recommend doing a couple practice lines before you start your cookie, just so you know that that line is coming out nice and clean. Now with the light blue, I did cut that one as small as well because we still need to outline our shell. So here we go. I'm going to fill in the blue part of this cookie. And because this is such a nice small area, it should be pretty easy to kind of smooth it out as you are flooding. So now that that's nice and filled in, I'm going to take my white, making sure my tip is clean. And I like to start in the center, so I touch my tip to the blue, squeeze, lift, release the pressure, and touch. Touch, squeeze, lift, and you'll notice that this will start to sink in to the icing. And you can add as many lines as you want. I'm just going to try to evenly space this out as much as I can. And so once that's done, for both of your cookies, you're going to set your sardine cans aside. Next up is our lemon cookie. Now this is our lemon shortbread sugar cookie. So you'll notice there is lemon zest and sugar on top of the cookie. Yummy, yummy. So go ahead and massage your green while you're watching this. Our yellow is already open, or should be, but I'm going to cut a small hole just like we've been practicing, or just like we've been doing for our outline. And I'm going to start with our leaves. Now I like to use the shape of the cookie as kind of my guide, but I'm going to place my tip right here in the center, and then I lift up, and I'm going to just follow the shape of this leaf here. And then I'll do the other one. There's a little triangle up here. Lift and touch, all the way around. And now I'm going to take my yellow, and I want to try my best not to have the yellow touch the green. I like to try to leave a little space. But I'm just going to go ahead and create like a little curve here all the way around. And when you're flooding your cookies, you just need to wait about a minute or two before filling them in, because you want the outline to crust a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and outline those, and then meet me back here to start flooding. To fill in our lemon, we can actually cut our hole bigger since we're all done with our yellow outlining. So I'm just going to cut a little bit more just so the icing can come out a little bit faster. Again, I'm going to squeeze this tape closed, and if you look at the photo, you want to make sure you're not dragging your tip on here, but if you look at the photo, there are little white lines on here, another wet on wet. So you're going to flood one cookie at a time and then add those little lines. You don't want to flood both of these and then come back and add the lines, because you want these to sink in. So I'm very close to the cookie but not quite touching it. I don't want to get that sugar to come up, so I'm just right above the cookie, filling this in, smoothing it out. So I like to hold this like a pencil and kind of just jiggle the surface. That's my favorite way to kind of fill in or to smooth out a larger area. Now while that's wet, I'm going to take my white and just touch my tip, squeeze, and kind of drag some little lines on here. So I'm pretty much squeezing until I have done with the length that I want, and then I release the pressure and lift. So squeeze, release the pressure, lift, staying close to the cookie that whole time. So go ahead and work on that. And actually when you're done, you can take your green. You don't need to cut this hole bigger, but if your yellow and green are not touching, you can come back and add, we'll just add one leaf for now, okay? Actually, you can fill in both. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. I love these smaller areas to flood. It's really a lot easier to puff these areas up. Fill that in. So I'm just jiggling the surface of this green to smooth it out. And we can actually fill in the triangle as well. So if you have like a table fan at home, you would want to put your sardine cookie and your lemon cookie in front of that fan. So go ahead and work on that and meet me back here. Next, we're going to go ahead and outline and flood our seashells. So I'm going to take my light blue, and this one is pretty easy. You're just going to outline the whole thing in light blue, lift and touch, lift and touch. All the way around. Doing. And then once both of these are outlined, you can cut your hole bigger and flood. Hold that tape nice and closed. And we'll fill this guy in. Usually when we're in class, I have my students use their little tray as a fan just to get a bit of a crust on these cookies quickly. So table fan at home is actually 10 times better than using our little trays. But we'll just fill this in quickly. It's a larger cookie, so you want to make sure that you move quick. Not leaving any holes. Forgot to mention, you guys want to check for spillage. I did not mention that before, but once you are done flooding a cookie, make sure this is a little bit of a looser icing, so it is more likely to spill over. If it is spilling over, just take your scribe tool and swipe it off. All right, so go ahead and do that, and then we're going to start our tomatoes next. For the tomato, here's where your circles will come in handy. I'm using the shape of this cutter as my guide where each circle goes. Now, I want to try to leave space between each circle, so I'm going to go ahead and touch my tip, squeeze, lift. I don't want these tomatoes touching each other. So, and they don't have to be perfect circles, even though that one was pretty perfect. But again, I'm leaving a little bit of border of cookie on here. And we're just wiping our tip off as we go. It's okay if they're not perfectly circular because tomatoes are all kinds of shapes. But you're just gonna go ahead. Again, I use that shape of the cookie where each tomato goes. So everywhere there's a curve, there's a little tomato. Try not to let those circles touch each other. So what you're going to do is you're going to let those crust, and then you're going to come back and fill them in. When you're filling these in, you'll notice there's a little white detail on here. We're doing the wet on wet technique again for this. So you're going to want to maybe do like 2 circles at a time and then add the white so that that red doesn't crust. Jiggle, 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 and then I will add my little red. So my tip is just dragging in there. Touch, drag. I'll do that with the rest of them. This is a cookie you want to be sure not to overflood because we don't want these tomatoes to be running into each other. I mean, it'd be fine if they were, but I like to have a little space between each. So go ahead and work on that. When you're done with that, we can actually, while you're here, I want to show you, you want to continue flooding your sardine can. So I'm going to take my red and fill in right up against the yellow and the blue. So as long as it's been about 3 minutes since you filled this one in, then you can go back with your red and fill all of that in. So I kind of like to turn the cookie as I fill this in. And there's really no need to cut this hole bigger because this is such a small area. And we'll come back and do some red detail on this also. So we do want a nice small hole for this red bag. All right, so I'll meet you back here in just a minute. Once your lemon has crusted a bit, you can come back and finish this guy up. So I want to take my green, make sure there's no crusties. I'm going to add just a little stem on here with the green, and then I'm going to take my blue, and now I would highly recommend this dark blue that you practice some loops on your parchment or on your paper towel before committing to your cookie. So here we go. So I'm going to touch my tip, squeeze, lift. I'm lifted pretty high here, creating a loop, and touch. You want to make sure your tip is nice and small. Lift and touch. Again, I would practice this a few times first, and then I'm going to do a little string coming down here, lift and touch very gently onto the cookie. Lift and touch. We do have one more detail. We want to do a little dot on here once this blue has crusted a bit. But you can go ahead and also come back to your seashell. So we're going to go ahead and do our detail lines on our seashell once that's crusted. So again, make sure your tip is the size that you want. I'm going to touch my tip here, squeeze, lift. This is with the dark blue, and I'm going to go around the outside first. Now, I am not touching my tip to the cookie until I get to the corner. So I'm taking my time, make sure that blue is coming out the right thickness for you, and then I touch, okay? Then you can kind of create just like a little bit of a curve across, and then I'll do the same thing here with this one, lift. This one you can touch at the point, at the little corner. So I lift, touch, touch. This is with our darker blue all the way around. And now we're going to do that again. So I'm going to, just like with the sardine can, you want to leave about 1/4 of an inch between the two colors. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to look at the line above just to try to evenly space this out as best as I can. Down. And then I'll do the same thing here, but this time I'm not putting my tip down. So we're just kind of doing some wavy. And then we are going to do some lines coming down. So I'm going to touch here, not quite all the way to the top, and kind of curve to the center. And I'll do another one here. And the way I know where to place these is where these curves are. Here's another curve, and then one more here. We're going to let that crust before we add our pearl. So go ahead and finish that and meet me back here. We're going to go ahead and do our tomatoes, and this is our second to last time of having to look up. So I'm going to show you the tomato vine, and then you guys can work on yours, and then the last thing I'm going to show you how to finish all of our details. So we're going to go ahead and take our green, and I like to start right here in this corner, lift up, kind of do a squiggle to this bottom tomato, release the pressure, and touch. So now I'm going to do a little squiggle from each tomato and touch the vine. So lift and touch. Kind of go in close to the center of the tomato. Make sure your tomatoes have crusted a bit or just be extra, extra careful. And now I'm going to add the little, just kind of a wave. Almost dragging my tip on the cookie, but not quite. Oh, these are so cute. So I'm just kind of very close to the cookie. If your hole is too big, you won't be able to create these little skinny details. So make sure your tip is the right size. And we'll go in right here. And then the last thing here is just to create that triangle and fill that in right away. And there's your tomatoes. They're so cute. Okay, finish that up and then meet me back here one last time and I'll show you how to finish the rest of your cookies. To finish our sardines, we want to rebag our light blue icing. And to do that, I'm just going to cut a big hole, not too big, just a little bit off of my old bag. Open up the new bag, insert the new bag, or the old bag into the new bag, and then pull that tail and squeeze as much of this light blue out as you can. And then I'm just going to tie this in a knot. Now I'm going to create my little sardines here. So we're going to cut a small hole like we did in the beginning, straight across. And here we go. Let's see, is that fuzzy? There we go. So I like to start with the middle one. I want to evenly space these out as best as I can, but I'm going to start here and go straight up, kind of curve it, and back down. And we'll do that on either side, leaving a space in between each. So it's kind of curved at the top ever so slightly, and then down. And then we're going to go ahead and fill them in one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. So I'm going to fill this in with the light blue. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. And then I'm going to take, it's hard to see in the photo, but I'm going to take my white, touch my tip, squeeze, 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 creating a dot, and then I'm going to take my light blue and touch my tip and squeeze another dot. While this is wet, I'm going to add a little smiley face, so I'm pretty much dragging my tip into the icing. I'm just above it, a curve here, and then you know how we did those little white dots? You're just going to kind of go down the sardine and create those little lines. I'm going to zoom in for our next one so you can see that a little better. These are so cute. I've been wanting to do a little sardine set for the longest time, for months. Just go right up against that red. We're going to add a little detail to that later. So add the eyeball first. So touch my tip, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And then right in the center, another dot. Smiley face. Curve under the eye, and then little lines. And then one more guy here. While these are crusting, because we do have a little bit more detail on here, but while they're crusting, we're going to finish our seashell. We're going to finish our lemon, and then last we'll come back to this guy here. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. So cute. So we're almost done with this guy. We will let him crust for just a couple minutes here. And we'll take out, oh my gosh, that looks so cute. We'll take out our little seashell. I'm going to show you how to finish this. So you guys have these little pearls here I got from Amazon. And I'm just going to take that out and just add a little dot of blue and gently place that on. You don't need too big of a dot to stick that on, but you don't want to push it down. You just want to gently set that on there. So that's our actually the first finished cookie was our tomatoes. Put that out. So cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, and then our lemon to finish this. Probably the hardest thing, guys, so I want to make sure you're watching. Just kidding, it's not hard. We're just going to go ahead and add a little dot. So I squeeze, create a little dot here, just for that little final detail on the bow. And then once your sardines have crusted a bit, we can go back with our red, and we're going to add a little detail line. So I'm going to go at the bottom here. Let me scooch this over a little bit more. I'm going to go straight across between that light blue and the red. And then here I'm going to go straight across. And then I'm going to go down, curve this, make a little swirl, and we're going to add little olives. It's optional, but I think it's so cute. But I'm just going to touch my tip here, create little ovals. I hate olives, but these are in olive oil. These sardines are in olive oil, so we need to add a little olive. So I touch my tip, squeeze, and create that little baby olive right there. So cute. And that is our finished, those are our finished cookies, guys. So I just want to say thank you. This might, I don't know, oh, I just put my finger in it. So now that's not my favorite. This might be my favorite one. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class. I had a lot of fun, and just email me if you have any questions. But thank you so much for signing up for class. I hope you had fun. Bye.